Our quote for today is, I think I figured out what HMO stands for. Here's my obituary. We're back in ordinary time, and we have our first readings from the book of Kings, the story of Elijah the prophet, certainly one of the greatest figures of the Old Testament. Remember, it was Elijah that showed up with Moses on Mount Tabor to be with the Lord during the Transfiguration. So who was this Elijah the prophet? He lived about the year 900 BC, born in a place called Gilead, modern-day Jordan, and he was chosen by God to be a great prophet, to go to the king of Israel at the time in the northern kingdom was Ahab and his pagan wife Jezebel, who was Phoenician-born. They were the two most evil leaders of Israel in its history. So God called Elijah to speak to them and to prophesy against them. And you know the story of how Jezebel came in and she destroyed all of the altars of God and destroyed the temples of the Jewish people, she killed all of the true prophets of Israel. All the good, righteous people were all slain by Jezebel and by Ahab. So the only one that was left was Elijah. Now, Jezebel had brought in worship of a pagan god, Baal, a fertility god, and with all the immorality that goes with that. And so she had 450 of her own priests of Baal, as well as another 400 worshippers of Asheri, another pagan god, that ate at her table. And so it was 950 against one, and Elijah was the one true prophet of God. This is where the story picks up today on Mount Carmel, where the great Elijah offers a spiritual duel between the God of Baal and the true God of Israel. And Elijah says to the chosen people, how long will you straddle the issue? How long will you sit on the fence? You're either going to be worshiping the one true God, and if so, follow him, or follow Baal. And so they had this great contest, and so they each took a bull, sacrificed it, placed it on the altar, and then said, we will pray and see whose God will light the fire. So, of course, Elijah lets them go first, and they cut up the bull, place it on the altar, and of course they begin to pray and shout from morning until noon, answer us, Baal. But it says there was no sound and no one was answering. So you have to love Elijah's strength and courage and sense of humor. He begins to taunt them and says, call louder. Maybe he's asleep. He might be meditating. Maybe he's gone on a journey. Perhaps he needs to be awakened. Apparently the ancient Hebrew says maybe he's using the restroom and has to, he's being delayed in the restroom. That's the original Hebrew. So he's taunting them. So they begin to shout louder. They even cut themselves and slash themselves with swords and spears till they're covered in blood. What a horrible pagan ritual. And it says there was not a sound, no one answered, and no one was listening. So it proved that it was a false pagan god. And now Elijah has his turn. What does he do first? He rebuilds the altar that had been torn down by Ahab and Jezebel. He rebuilds the altar to bring about true worship, and he takes 12 stones to rebuild the altar for the 12 tribes of Israel, to remind them of the one true God of Israel. And then he even makes it more difficult, because he tells them to take 4 jars of water, and they pour the water over the bull and the wood and the stones 3 times until the whole trench is filled with water. And so now we have the prayer of Elijah, so powerful. Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, let it be known this day that you are the God of Israel, that I am your servant and have done all these things by your command. Answer me, Lord, that this people may know that you, the Lord, are God, and bring them back to their senses. It says, the fire of God came down upon the sacrifice and consumed the burnt offering, consumed the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even lapped up It even evaporated all the water that was there. And seeing this, the people fell prostrate and said, "The Lord is God, the Lord is God." And then they killed the 450 pagan prophets of Baal. So this is the powerful story of Elijah, the last remaining true prophet of Israel, who showed that God alone is the true God, and how they were able to defeat the pagan priests of Baal and to help restore true worship in Israel.